You are walking down a busy street. Someone collapses 10 feet in front of you. Dozens of people are around. You freeze. You wait. You look at everyone else instead of the person on the ground. But the real answer for why you do this is far stranger than simple coldness. It reaches back into the architecture of your brain, built long before cities, before crowds, before strangers ever stood shoulder to shoulder in silence. Your ancestors rarely faced emergencies alone. They faced them in small groups of people they knew by name. Every face was familiar. Every reaction mattered. If your ancestor hesitated while others acted, the group noticed. If your ancestor acted while others hesitated, the group noticed that too. Survival meant reading the group and moving with it. This wiring never left you. It just got dropped into a world of strangers it was never built for. In 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment building in New York. Newspapers reported that dozens of neighbors heard her cries and did nothing. The story shocked the country. Why would so many people stay silent while someone screamed for help? Psychologists John Darley and Bib Latane didn't accept the easy answer that people had simply become cruel. They suspected something more mechanical was happening inside the mind of every witness. They built an experiment to test it. Participants sat alone in a room, believing they were part of a group discussion through an intercom. One voice on the intercom suddenly cried out, apparently having a seizure. When participants believed they were the only listener, the vast majority rushed to help within seconds. But when participants believed several other people were also listening, many did nothing at all. Nothing about the emergency changed, only the number of witnesses changed, and that single detail flipped human behavior on its head. Darley and Latane called this diffusion of responsibility. Your brain does something ancient and automatic the moment a stranger's distress enters a crowd. It quietly asks, are other people equally responsible right now? The more people present, the smaller your perceived share of the responsibility becomes. It isn't a decision, it isn't a moral failure, it's arithmetic your mind runs without asking permission. But there's a second layer underneath it, one that's even sneakier. It's called pluralistic ignorance. Picture the same collapsed stranger on the street. You glance around. Everyone else looks calm, so you assume it must not be a real emergency. Meanwhile, every other person is doing the exact same thing. They're looking at you. They're looking at each other. Everyone is calm on the outside while quietly panicking on the inside, each person using everyone else's frozen face as proof that nothing is wrong. A crowd of concerned strangers can accidentally build a wall of collective calm, and that wall could cost someone their life. Researcher Bib Latane didn't stop at diffusion of responsibility. Alongside Judith Rodin, he ran another experiment in 1969, this time using a room that slowly filled with smoke while a person filled out a questionnaire inside. Alone, most participants left to report the smoke within minutes. In a room with two strangers who had been secretly instructed to ignore the smoke completely, the vast majority of real participants also ignored it, even as the room grew hazy enough to obscure their own paperwork. They looked to others. Others looked calm, so they stayed silent and let their eyes water instead of raising an alarm. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This isn't a flaw that only appears in strangers or bad people. It appears in you. It has probably already appeared in you, in moments you don't even remember as bystander moments. The time you saw a phone left on a train seat and assumed someone else would flag it down. The time you saw a strange car parked oddly for days and assumed a neighbor had already called it in. The time you noticed someone looking upset in a group chat and figured someone closer to them would reach out first. Every one of those moments is the same ancient mechanism, quietly running its calculation in the background of your mind. So, does knowing this actually change anything? Surprisingly, yes. Decades of follow-up research, including a large 2011 meta-analysis led by psychologist Peter Fisher, found that simply understanding the bystander effect measurably increases the odds that a person will intervene the next time they witness one. Awareness breaks the automatic loop. Once you know your brain is silently scanning the crowd for permission to act, you can catch yourself in the act of scanning. You can override the ancient shortcut with a conscious decision instead. There's a practical trick that emerges directly from Darley and Latane's original findings, and it's worth remembering. In an emergency surrounded by strangers, don't shout for help into the crowd in general. Point at one specific person. Describe exactly what you need from them. The moment responsibility becomes singular instead of shared, the diffusion collapses instantly. A stranger who would have frozen in a crowd of unnamed witnesses will often move immediately once they're the only one being asked. Think about how strange this really is. The same tribal instinct that once kept your ancestors alive, the instinct to read the group before acting alone, can now make you stand frozen while someone needs you most. Cities gave you thousands of neighbors. Your brain still expects dozens. Somewhere in that mismatch, entire emergencies disappear into silence, witnessed by people who each assumed someone else was already handling it. So the next time you are standing in a crowd and something feels wrong, remember what's actually happening inside you. It isn't cruelty, it isn't indifference, it's an old survival calculation running on hardware built for a world with no strangers in it at all. Notice the moment your eyes drift toward the crowd instead of toward the person who needs you. That's the exact instant the ancient wiring takes over, and that's the exact instant you now have the power to interrupt it, to point, to speak, to be the one person who breaks the silence everyone else was quietly waiting to hear.